welcome to the Dungeon Cooldown. It's Monday.
Happy Monday.
We're so
That's
happy
right.
to hang out with you. We love seeing everybody on Mondays, talking about the dungeon run. And before we get started, I wanted to say hello to our early birds in the chat. Hello to Jim Whitted and to Partos and Johnny Valentine, J.E. Welliard, Goofus McDorkle, C. Joe. Hello everybody. And we had some cheers from Goofus McDorkle and Jim Whitted. Thank you so much for that. I think we also had some gift subs from an anonymous gifter who gifted 5 community gift subs to our community. Thank you so much, anonymous gifter. We appreciate you and your support. And I see everybody throwing up these squid emotes in chat. Where is that coming from? And Goofus McDorkle with another cheer. Thank you so much. And hi, Michael. All right, so Jared.
Wait, is anonymous gifter the username, or is anonymous gifter just mean they gave it anonymously?
It is an anonymous gifter, so I think they marked it as anonymous because I've also on my own channel been gifted from a username anonymous gifter or username anonymous something. So I think this is just marked as anonymous. So we appreciate you for your generous gift.
Cool. Tell everybody where you're at right now, Jessica.
Yeah, I am in St. Louis, Missouri on a job right now. So I am
luxurious.
In a hotel.
Romantic St. Louis, Missouri.
I'm on #hotel Wi-Fi right now. So if there's any lag or breaking up, it is because of my hotel.
Yeah. But Jessica is so devoted to the show that she still does the cooldown even from afar.
That's right. Can't get enough.
Yeah. Well, today's cooldown, we got some good questions on Patreon and a couple questions on Discord. We're also paying attention to chat, unlike the regular show where we're not watching chat. We are watching chat now. So if you have any questions or follow-up questions to what we end up talking about, please let me know. Music Man 77 is saying, can the volume be increased?
Yeah, we can increase the volume. I can't increase myself any louder, but I can make Jared louder.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Okay, well, yeah, maybe tweak it just a tiny bit.
Yeah, tweaked. Hath been tweaked.
Cool. So let's jump into these, shall we? So Idaho Judd asks, Jess, what do you think makes Saint a unique character? Well, I can think of several things that make Saint unique, but I'll let you.
Oh wait, I want to
that.
hear you first. That's interesting to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, as far as like making you different from Fahima, the thing that I like the most about Saint, initially, anyways, especially with this particular group, is how unbelievably optimistic she is. I felt like Fahima was excited and intrigued, but didn't necessarily, embody hope. It's not that she wasn't hopeful or thinking, positive thoughts, but I feel like Saint really drives that home, which I appreciate as a dungeon master because nothing is harder to do. I mean, my job is never harder than if the player characters aren't motivated, and hope is a strong motivator. So that's one of the things I really like about Saint, and I think makes her unique in this particular group and separate from Fahima. Physically, obviously, she's totally different because of the whole half Luxodon or elephant, half wood elf. I do have a question. I don't know if you've already talked about this before or not. And then you can answer the question, Idaho Judd's question. What popped up into your mind, or what gave you the inspiration to decide to do half Luxodon, half wood elf? Was it more just the fact that you wanted to play an elephant, but you wanted to not just be like the stereotypical elephant Luxodon, or what transpired there?
Well, first came cleric. I knew I wanted to play a cleric, and so
why is that?
I love them. I think that they're second.
Okay.
I think they're second best to warlocks, and I love the concept of your purpose is driven from this extraplanar being. There's something really juicy about that, like struggling against something that is kind of against your will, almost like your human will, innately, and your gifts are almost like a bargain with someone. Yeah, I don't know. I just like that concept. I could probably dig into that more psychologically at a later point, but so I was looking at races that would fit with the cleric, and Loxodons fit really well with clerics. I think they get wisdom bonuses or something like that. And I was like, to be honest, I think I've said this before, but the reason I wanted to play a half elf, half Loxodon is just because my characters have to be cute. I don't think Loxodon are cute.
Are you saying elephants aren't cute, Jess?
They're cute, but like, you know what I mean? My character's gotta be cute. You know, she's gotta be.
There's an ex-girlfriend of mine that would vehemently disagree with you. She was absolutely obsessed with elephants, especially Asian elephants, because those are the smaller species. And all she ever wanted to do was to travel to a continent where you can not even ride, but just take care of the elephants, because they're in like a protected, what is it called? Protected species or pretated area.
Oh yeah, I would love to do that too, especially in Thailand. I mean, look, elephants are cute. Are Loxodon cute? I don't know.
That's true. I think elephants on their own are definitely cuter than elephant people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's valid. That's valid. Sanctuary. Thank you, Goofus McDorkle. I'm just gonna speculate on words today, and then Goofus McDorkle is gonna fill it in.
And I am seeing your questions in chat here too. So once we answer the Patreon questions, I'm writing everybody's questions down, and we'll get to those.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome.
So I see you, Ryan Winters, To a Mask, and Lady Cariel.
Awesome. So, Jess, what do you think makes Saint a unique character?
Also, her optimism, her undying. Well, it's not really optimism. It is just, I'll say it comes off as optimism, but it's not optimism. So that, I agree. And what else makes her unique?
Positivity.
I mean, I think the subclass itself is, it hasn't really shown itself that much yet, but I think that's going to be unique, using song. And I have a lot of really cool ideas of how to incorporate song into future episodes that I've been talking to Ron about. So,
good.
Yeah, we'll see more of that.
Good. Yeah, I think the thing that I got the most excited about when you told me about your character concept was the song domain. I felt like that was a very interesting choice, because it would have been easy for you to go bard.
Mm-hmm. I'm so averse to playing bards for some reason.
Yeah, well,
because I am one in real life, maybe.
Bards are also funky. They used to be, jack of all trades, master of none, and therefore they were not really good at anything. And in 5th edition, they changed so much with bards to make them effective, but then that made them more of a spellcaster. So a lot of their bardly abilities almost takes a back seat to the spells that they can cast, because they're a full caster.
Yeah.
And if there was one thing I would change about the bards, is I would make the bardic abilities more powerful. So like, if you decide to use one of your 4 times per day or whatever it is, song effects, those would be more powerful in like a subclass instance, but then you would only be like a half spellcaster. But then that would allow for game balance. That would allow, I think, for those song and performance abilities to really shine, to really, kind of come to the forefront. Well, and your subclass would make such a huge difference on your character at that point too.
Campaign 3, Jarred Kjack rewrites the bard.
There you go. There you go.
I want to address a couple comments really quick here. Justin
Sure.
said, one of your parents thought Loxodon were cute. You know what, Justin?
Touche.
Frank Lee says, I like Saint. Her sort of upper classy, happy-go-lucky, and lightly vacant presence is so hilarious. That's a really funny description. And Just Jules says, not a question, but I absolutely love the voice you chose for Saint. It makes me happy. Thank you. I find that a British accent makes it so much easier for me to roleplay than the Irish accent. I really felt like the Irish accent was a handicap for me. I don't know. It's just easier, I think. British, it's like bigger words just roll off the tongue because you're already there. You know, you're already elevated.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Oh, there was a second part to that. How does Saint differ from Fahima? But I think we kind of already nailed that as well. Another one from Idaho Judd. Jarred, can you talk about your process with the force cards and how you balance their gameplay? Yes. Yes, I can. So the way force cards are working currently is you can go to our website. Jess, what's our website again?
thedungeonrun.tv.
Yes. And on there, there's a button or a page for submitting force cards. And then you fill out a form, and then that form gets pushed into our G drive. And then I get to go through those and pick out the ones that I want to use for the next week. And we got a lot of submissions recently, which is great. I very much appreciate that. Just to give you an example of the process, is I go into the G drive, and the first thing that it says is, do you want it to be a force of nature or a force of cosmos? And sometimes I switch that depending on what the actual card does. Do you want it to be a helpful card, a hindrance card, or a neutral card? What tier is it? And sometimes people, say it's a tier 1 and the card, gives one of the characters a super powerful magical item. And I'm like, that's not tier 1. So I tweak that usually. Your Discord username so that we give you credit on the show. The name for the card, which sometimes is a great way to inspire me on what you're reaching for, what you're going for behind the card, the motivation behind the card, the storytelling motivation. And then, of course, the last thing is the effect that the card has. So here's an example. This is card number 653. A Force of Nature card, helpful, tier 2. The username is Tapartos, who has submitted a bajillion card ideas, and I've already used several of them, and I'll probably use more. The name of this card is Ursula's Spirit. And right then and there, right out of the bat, or right off the bat, that grabs my attention. Because you're already using Ursula and you're using Spirit, and those are two things that I feel like are already heavily integrated into the story. So that's going to get my juices flowing and get me excited about reading what the effect of the card is. And then the example is what effect? To be used by the party when the next secret room happens. The spirit of Ursula appears in front of you. She hands you a scroll and says, sorry, I can't be with you right now, but I'll be back. This might help. Then disappears. You get a scroll of Rusting Grasp. I don't know what Rusting Grasp is. I'd have to Google that. I don't think that's like a stock spell, but I'm sure there's probably a homebrewed spell somewhere online called Rusting Grasp. And then the very last part is can be learned by one person during the next long rest. So I love the concept behind this card. What I would probably do is I would tweak the actual game mechanic effect that it would do in game. And depending on how powerful that effect is, I would raise or lower that tier of that card. And lately, the tier cards have been, even the tier 1 cards have been pretty effective, pretty powerful, and pretty helpful. So I'm tempted, especially if we get into the higher tiers, to have the cards be even bigger, like have them like Mind Link is a perfect example of something that has directly affected the story in an interesting way. And it's not even necessarily positive or negative, it's just interesting storytelling. And I think you and Otto ran with that, which is why the secret room was so much juicier this time around than previous secret rooms, because it got to be a secret room with two people.
Yeah.
Even though Otto was kind of playing an NPC Sparrow, spoiler alert for those of you that haven't seen the episode. Even though she was playing an NPC, I still felt like it brought so much to the scene. It gave someone for you to really play off of, and you could see what Saint and the Frost Giant Queen were pushing against, if that makes sense. What did you think of that experience, Jess?
Just overall as a player?
Well, yeah, and especially having the Mind Link card affect the secret room and having Serena there in the room with you.
I loved it. I mean, I'm all for having more secrets that are shared, because I think that it gives us more to play with, because I think as a solo person keeping a secret, it's kind of it's hard to know when to share. But if there's two people that have the same information but perceived it in different ways, then they can choose to share that information in different ways, and that can create drama in a good way. And it's it's cool to see how somebody else experiences a secret room as well. And it was cool that Ron, spoiler, Ron was writing Serena notes to kind of indicate what her character in the vision was supposed to be saying. And I didn't know what she was going to say, and then I just saw her saying words to me, and it felt really ethereal. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fun because Ron was also writing her words to use, but then she would use the same word again and again, but use it in a different tone, which elevated it in a way. It kind of elevated the stakes for the secret room, which was nice. I don't know. That's my whole goal with these force cards. Is I felt like the force cards before, especially when there were so many of them, it got to the point where it was all about the cards being read and being triggered. And my goal for the force cards now is that they don't necessarily happen as frequent. I think that was unsustainable. But when they do happen, it has a real tangible effect in game and in story. And so the second part of this question is working with game balance. That's my number one concern with the force cards is game balance and story balance. And it's going to be interesting when we get to those higher tiers, what effect that's going to have. Because right now we've only been dealing with tier 1 and tier 2. But when we get into tier 3 and 4 and especially 5, those completely change what's happening that moment in the story.
I'm so excited.
It's not like how it used to be where, you know, you'd get a card and the card would be a one-time use and it would give you advantage or disadvantage or take some of your gold or something like that. They're much, much more story driven and much bigger and more powerful than they ever were in the past.
Wow. Also, we just got another anonymous gift for Fallen 133. Thank you so much for that gift sub to our community, anonymous gifter. We appreciate you.
I love anonymous gifts. Okay, next question. Loyal Volcario Servant. That's a great username. Saint, how deep/dark do the visions need to go in order for your faith/loyalty to be tested? Ooh, that's a good question. I definitely felt like you were getting tested in this latest vision.
You know, I think that is Saint's journey of this campaign. Her journey is, at what point do you break? At what point do you realize that you can express yourself in the way that you want to express yourself. So I don't think it's going to happen right away, and I don't think it would take one vision. We'll see. I think it's going to happen later, much later.
Right.
I don't know what it'll
Yeah.
take, honestly, but I think it will take something dark.
So what do you mean by dark? Like, give me an example of something dark that might happen that would cause her to question her faith, because she seems pretty faithful. She's pretty devout.
Yeah, I would say I don't know how I can answer without kind of spoiling where I see her journey going.
Sure. So instead of it being saint specific, what's something just in general that could happen to a cleric that you think might cause them to question their faith? I'm just kind of trying to gauge a rating here on what you think is dark or heavy enough to cause that.
Well, I think with any kind of patron, what they've done is they have keyed into your deepest desire. They've keyed into your insecurity, perhaps, into something that you really, really want. They know how to manipulate you if they're a warlock patron, or they know how to make you feel validated or important or whatever it is for a cleric. And so if either of those patrons reach a point where they break that, where the subject realizes that they were lied to, then I think that would take the change. But if you think of any kind of like manipulative, horrible relationship that you might have been in, anybody in chat, if you've ever been in a really horrible relationship that you've stayed in for too long, it can sometimes take a horribly long time to come to that realization, because you make a lot of allowances for that give and take that happens. And it's not until it's all over that you realize how far you've gone.
Sure. So what if your god is good? What if your god's not a twisted, manipulative,
Well, then I would never lose faith, right?
Yeah, sure. All right.
God is good. God is great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to touch that one.
I think it's
so.
I think it's a fascinating subject to talk about gods who are not.
Oh,
actually
totally.
Good.
Oh, totally. And I also think it's interesting because what would be considered good in one person's viewpoint might be considered evil in another.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like your group is already right out of the gate starting to wrestle with who these gods are and what's happening in this world, and trying to decide whose side they're on and what they want, how they fit into it,
Yeah, well,
which I think is.
We haven't had any direct contact yet with gods other than in
Yeah.
the vision, and then Saint's brief contact, I believe.
Right.
I don't think any of us. I think Saint's been the closest to being in contact with a god.
Right. Well, I mean, you could consider being sucked up in a storm and moved to another part of the island direct contact from a god.
Well, it wasn't face to face, though, There was no,
Right.
this hath been done to you.
Right.
This is
Don't
why.
you think your head would explode if you heard the voice of a god, though?
I don't know. I don't know how the gods work in this world. Maybe they're just like us. They walk the earth like us.
All right. Yeah.
Is there a Dungeon Run Jesus?
No, there is not a Dungeon Run Jesus. No, these gods are much more, as I was saying way back in the day on Arcane Artistry, they're much more like Greek or Norse gods, where they will do things to affect the world, but they're also not necessarily all good or all evil. They are selfish to an extent.
Yeah.
If you look at the Greek and the Norse pantheon, there's a lot of selfishness.
Didn't Hermes walk the earth? Aren't there some gods that walk the earth with humans?
In times of war, Yeah, sure. They would pray to Hermes, of course. Um, or no, that's Ares. Sorry, Hermes is the messenger. Yeah, Hermes.
That guy was just fooling in all places.
Yeah, he was kind of, well, he was the messenger of the gods, so that he was the one that could actually get from Zeus to,
The underworld.
Hercules or what have you. Yeah, he was the one that could zip around and do all of that. So yeah, I would say he definitely traversed the world. But it's interesting because in the Norse pantheon, you would be talking to a god and not even know it, or interacting with a god, because you would just be interacting with a stag and not realize that that stag is a god, or talk to a tree and not realize that that tree is a god.
Oh, you heard it here first. We gotta look out for trees from animated trees from now on Dungeon Run because Jarred might make it
Yeah,
a god. Spinetti,
yeah.
thank you so much for that gift sub to our community. That goes to Dr. Sutton. Thank you so much. We appreciate you,
Uh,
Spinetti.
and Drew from IT says Hermes was a text messenger, literally. Yeah. So loyal Valcario's servant also asks, does Saint forever endure pain through her smile? Your scene was so powerful it wrecked me. I think he's referring
Aww.
to the vision scene where the frost giant queen was smiling, and I think Saint was embodying some of that. Is that true? Is that what you were thinking? Or was that Saint
Um,
actually smiling?
it was half and half. Yeah.
Okay.
It was Saint, and then it wasn't Saint anymore, and she was still smiling. And I was kind of getting the impression from how you and Ron were describing the scene that it was almost like I was smiling against my will because she was smiling and I was inside of her, and that was kind of Saint's
Right.
struggle. So,
Yeah. The
yeah.
vision was primarily from the frost giant queen's point of view. And I think you were along for the ride. You were being shown what happened. But I also wanted to give you some agency and be able to, you know, look around and ask questions and affect the vision to some degree.
Well,
So it was interesting when you fought back and you tried to throw away this, or you did throw away the staff and start to strip your clothes off, because I had to ask myself, what would the frost giants think if they saw their leader throw down her staff and rip off her clothes? And then I realized that
which
they're Vikings, essentially. That's their you know, belief system. And so it kind of lent itself to the savagery of the moment, the fact that the frost giants were reveling in destroying this dwarven uh, stronghold. So it kind of worked in a weird way, and I loved it. I love that added flavor, because I don't know if I would have had that happen had I just wrote the vision, scripted it, and then said, "This is what you see. Deal with it."
I
You know.
totally forgot I took all my clothes off. I'm glad you reminded me of that. I mean, I'm gonna go back and rewatch it anyway, just because I know my notes are like chicken scratch. But yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say too that this is reminding me that another distinction between Saint and Fahima is that in that vision, if it was Fahima, I think that she's always been feisty. She's feisty from the beginning, and she talks
Sure.
back, and she would have tried to do something about what was happening because Fahima came out the gate thinking that she had the power to change the world, and Saint is a follower. Saint did not know what to do. She did not think she had the power to change anything. All she could do was make herself vulnerable, and that's why she had to just discard what she was wearing, because that's the only way that she could think of how to handle the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that a lot. I was a little worried because I thought, if I gave you control of the vision, that you wouldn't piece together what happened and then the message wouldn't get across. But that's why it was so beautiful to have Serena there, because that gave us that tool, and that all came from a card. That's the thing that blows my mind, is the ideas that the watchers have that they send us that we then incorporate. Sometimes make those scenes and those moments that much more rich and fulfilling than what they would have been had it just been us telling the story.
Yeah. Wow, I wish I could turn what you just said into a commercial for the Dungeon Run. That's like so perfectly said for why we try to have interactivity on our show, because you're right, it makes it so much deeper.
Yeah. Frankly delicious. What does it mean to see the world in a grain of sand? ? Basically, the idea is that any little thing in the world, a grain of sand, a wildflower, contains some sort of greater cosmic truth if you can look at it with enough energy and imagination. I thought that was a question, but I think it's a question plus a statement. Ryan Winters. Oh, I got a question for Jarred. Episode 1, the giant in the ice. Are there giants active in this world? Yes. Sorry if that's a spoiler for episode 1. I wouldn't worry about spoiling episode 1. I think anybody that's tuning in to this, where we're talking about the show, has probably seen episode 1. The idea behind that ice cave is that everything is waking up from a long frozen past. So yes, the frost giants are active now, especially. That was why it started there, why the story started there, is because it was important to see that and to witness that and see the beginnings of what was once frozen in time now being released again. So yeah, great question.
Did we finish all of our Patreon questions?
I was going to get right back into it. Yeah.
Oh.
Tapartos. Jess, so now that your mind is not just your own, how do you feel Saint will deal with being really close to someone they just met, and will she be able to mentally separate her own memories from Otto's? Good question. By the way, the MindLink card was only going to last for 24 hours, so it will probably end pretty soon once we get back into our next episode.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Go ahead, Jess.
Oh, I think Saint is missing her twin sister, so I think that she would take great comfort in having another person to share things with. It's kind of what she's used to.
Yeah.
Let somebody else drive.
Yeah. I really love the idea that because your minds have been linked for at least a full day, that there are going to be things that you have thought about and that Otto has thought about that you will now know about each other. Mm-hmm. And no one else will know that. It will be as if you had, an entire episode alone, just the two of you sitting around a campfire talking and getting to know one another. So it'll be fun to play with that idea. I think it'll be fun to have you two play with that idea more so than Ron or I inserting things into your mind and saying, well, you would know this and you would have seen that. I think it'll be more interesting for Serena and Jess to discover those.
Yeah, I mean, I did text her something during the last show that a memory of Saints that she didn't reveal yet, so maybe she'll decide to share that later.
Yeah, good. Has she shared anything with you yet? Has Serena or Otto shared anything with you yet as far as her mind link is concerned?
Well, just the thing about her, how the inside of her mind feels to me. But I don't think I have any specific memories.
Okay. Just Jewel says, it's fun to think about in game. It's just an interesting card to mind share. However, in real life, that would be absolutely terrifying. I wonder why you say that, Just Jules. Why would that be terrifying? Why would sharing your mind with someone that you barely know, that you just met, be absolutely terrifying?
Telepathy is the worst superpower. Or mind reading.
Mind reading is tough, but mind control, on the other hand, I think is way more powerful than the Marvel Universe gives it credit for.
Well, because it's a forbidden curse in Harry Potter.
Right.
So.
Right.
What is it? Imperio?
Oh, that's the specific spell. I'll be sure to say that when I use mind control on you guys. Anyways, Tapartos, Jarred, Would the Mind Link have any permanent ability or skill modifiers for either Otto or Saint? Possibly. It's very, very possible. Like, would Saint have learned anything from Otto about being a rogue, or Otto learn any cleric abilities, seeing as both would have remembered all the training, etc.? Really fun spell, so wasn't sure how far it would go.
Well,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know that
it was
it's
a
really
great.
like remembering our entire history. It's more like reading our minds in the moment and things that are triggered on the spot.
Yes, exactly. I definitely think that if long term Otto wanted to take a level of cleric, or Saint wanted to take a level of rogue, arguably you could say that that inspired that journey. But I wouldn't have it be a permanent thing that just happens unless it's a higher level card, or unless you as players want that to be a part of your character. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. Because if we just gave it to you, it'd be like, well, that's almost like the dungeon master saying, this is who you are now, or this is a part of you now. But I think it's much more interesting to have you as players decide your own character's
and
growth.
We would definitely talk about it and figure out some organic way of making that happen. Like, oh, I really saw this happened, and I was wondering maybe you could show me.
Yeah. I will say this, the higher level cards could have a lasting effect. The lower level cards, I'm thinking, they wouldn't last much more than a few hours or a day. But once you get up into like tier 4, tier 5, those could last for quite some time. Yeah.
How do we get up to those again?
Through the force cards. Through the sprouted potatoes and through the cosmic yams.
How many do we need to get to the
big varies. Ones? It varies. So it's a staggered progress bar. So the first tier, it's only one. It only takes one potato or one yam to trigger. But then it takes a few of them to trigger tier 2, and then a few more to trigger tier 3, and so on and so forth. But it all builds. So, if
like
you have
6, like 10.
Oh, I don't know the specifics. Ron set that up.
Okay.
We'll have to ask Ron. Yeah.
And we have something exciting coming to the Twitch stream very soon that will make all of this a lot easier for you to see.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't know when that's coming, but it's coming soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that'll even
in theory that'll even allow the channel points to be used too, right?
Yeah.
Is that what we talked about?
Yeah. I think phase 2 is using channel points, but phase 1
channel points.
Channel points.
Great. Love it.
Marvel, he's giving it away.
Yep. Big spoiler.
You can be Robert Downey Jr. if I'm Tom Holland. I feel like Robert Downey Jr. would give stuff away.
Sure. I feel like we got to give something away if it's the two of us on a cooldown. We got to accidentally give something away. So that'll be today's channel points. Anyways, let's do the Discord question. So Johnny Valentine, for the cooldown today, posted here since it's a secret room question. Question for Jessica. After the secret room, what is Saint's mindset or thoughts toward the Frost Giant Queen, who is soon to be free from the ice and could be back to possibly finish what she started with the Astral Dwarves? Hopefully Morgan's not in chat anymore.
He is.
Well,
but I mean, Saint shared.
Plug your ears, Morgan.
Saint and Otto shared with a lot of what they saw.
I kind of feel like that's going to be coming up real quick in the next episode anyway, so I'm not too worried about it.
I think Saint's embarrassed that she tried to free the Frost Giant. She was just trying to do her best, and their best was the wrong choice, and she could have been responsible for releasing potentially destruction on the world again, and she doesn't take that lightly.
Well, I mean, no offense, but the Frost Giant Queen was going to break out anyways. I don't think you speeding that process up or taking your mace to the, I think it was a shaman actually, not even the Frost Giant Queen.
Right, yeah.
I don't think that would have changed a whole lot. If everybody worked together in tandem to free one of the Frost Giants, that would have been interesting, but they also had been frozen in place for a very long time, so I think it would have there would have been some moment of like shock from the frost giant before they could even really gather what was happening around them. You know what I
That's
mean?
that's
I don't.
that's very kind of you to say.
Yeah.
Saint, however, would not really. She would still think it was quite ghastly that she did that and embarrassed.
I see.
Like
All right.
she's always just trying to do her best and to yeah, and she didn't.
Right. Well, depending on your point of view, the frost giants aren't necessarily the bad guy. If you want to go,
Yeah, if you're like
if you want to go real deep.
pro giant and you hate dwarves, you hate
Yeah.
astral dwarves.
Yeah. Then a question for Jared: is the remoras that might get free as well the only one left in this cold region of the island, or are there more out there? If it is only one left, will it upset the food chain, so to speak, or balance of this frozen region of the North Island? So all of the things that they saw as a group in the ice cave in the beginning, the remoras, the cave bear, the frost giant shamans, the frost giant queen, the giant alien looking blue cat with the pieces of dwarven armor plate wrapped around its abdomen, and even the head or the hanging reindeer carcasses. All of that has had a reason or had purpose for being there, and they were all breaking free while the ice giant or the ice cave was cracking and falling apart. So any of those creatures might be encountered at some point later on down the line. That being said, frost giants are nasty. Remoras are nasty. Dire cave bears are nasty. So I don't know if Ron and I would throw them at the player characters right away. But I will say this: there are other creatures in the Arctic North that are roaming around as well. It is desolate and it is sparse as far as like, animal and plant life, but there are creatures that are able to survive up in that frozen cold. And there are probably even other remoras and bears and what have you that exist up there. So the answer is yes, there are more out there, and yes, they might run into them at some point, depending on how things go. So, Jess, let me ask you this: we did the vision as a group. You decided to now go to Brudevik to explore. Is that something that you think Saint would have done had you not had the vision? And did the vision make you want to go, or did it scare you from going? I'm interested as a dungeon master what effect it had on you as a player.
Saint would not have chosen to go back there because she is trying to just follow the command of her god and to find her sister and to help everybody else get to safety. And I don't think that the castle, or the ruins rather, do any of those things. But
Mm-hmm.
because of the vision, that did feel like a message from her god, especially since she saw her god, or the sparrow of her god, right, in the vision.
Right.
Um, and so she feels now that her only purpose, is to go do their bidding. And so, yeah, she would go do that. But if the group altogether decided that they didn't want to go, she wouldn't have fought them.
Mm. So it seems like Saint is more of a follower than a leader.
Definitely. Yeah.
I say. It's interesting because there was that discussion that happened during the show about who is the leader of your herd,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody jumped forward. It was more like a let's debate this. Let's let's co-lead or take turns leading. And I know how well that worked for season 1.
Oh yeah,
Who do you think the leader is? Who do you
that
think the leader should be?
well, that let me just say first that conversation made Saint extremely uncomfortable, but she didn't show it. And um, who should the leader be? I don't think that there should be any leader yet. I mean, there's really no reason, I guess, to have a leader because we're not quite. When do you need a leader? It's when
It's usually a representative,
you.
somebody that would represent the group.
It's somebody who kind of needs to have the final say, right?
Yeah, it's that, but I always think of leaders, especially in role-playing games, as like who speaks for your party, who's the face of the party, who's the person that's going to negotiate or like if you're going to be brought before a king and a queen or something like that, who would be the one that gets to speak for everyone if you're not allowed to all speak in unison or at the same time or what have you? If you had to just send one person, who would that be? Or like you were saying, who has the final say? So if there's 2 people that really want to go to Brudevik and 2 people that absolutely don't want to go to Brudevik, who is that person that gets to break the tie?
I think so far, Cristobal and Otto have the most natural leader energy, but I think that Cristobal is too into his own, his own survival right now to be a leader of the group, and I think Otto is too naive to the world that he's living on now to be the leader, and so I would say Valcorio is also in it too selfish, and Saint is a follower. So that leaves Coco, because I agree with what folks are saying in chat. She's the one who's a little more big picture right now, and she seems to be the most as kind of like what's the word, like not flighty, but like what's it called? And you're like up here.
Ethereal. She's ethereal.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a word I can't find right now. As whatever that is, as she is, I do think that she is the most level-headed so far in the circumstances that we've been in.
Interesting. It seems like there's quite a bit of debate in chat as well as to who the leader might be. People are saying Otto, Val, but he doesn't want to be, Cristobal, but Cristobal is wimpy. So it seems like the Watchers themselves, does the leader necessarily have to be like a big, beefy bruiser? Like I think sometimes the best leaders are the ones that, I'm not necessarily arguing one way or the other, I'm just sort of discussing this. But I think sometimes leaders in groups oftentimes are the people that are the least physically imposing but are the best at negotiating.
Yeah.
Because they have to appease the party, they also have to further the goal in theory, and they also have to appease whoever the NPC is that they're negotiating or interacting with.
I mean, I definitely anticipate that the leader of the group will see seasons. Maybe in the frozen Arctic part, Coco's leader. Maybe in another part, the city part, Cristobal is the clear leader, So it'll just depend on what happens. But you're right. As we saw in Campaign 1, it can be helpful to have a leader at times instead of everyone debating back and forth as to what to do next.
Yeah, I think in Season 1, we eventually got to the point where it was like, well, it makes sense for this person to lead now because they know the most about what's happening in this area or this particular conflict or problem. And the funny thing is even though we've only had 4 episodes, I feel like this group has, because of their situation, has become very cohesive as a group. It feels like it almost feels like they've been together for longer than what they actually have. But what's interesting is that the personality types aren't as forceful as some of the personality types that we had in season 1, and so it makes it seem like more of a team and less of a group of individual heroes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think especially with the synergy that Coco, Otto, and Saint have from being from the North Island and all of the kind of nature aspects of their characters kind of blending.
Yeah.
Do we have any more
Yeah.
Discord questions? Because we're almost out of time, and I do have a couple of chat questions to get to.
Yeah, no, let's go ahead. Let me look to see if there's any more, but I think that's it.
Okay. Well, early on in chat, Lady Cariel asked, how is Saint the same or different from you? She's the same because we both like to sing our feelings, and different from me because I would say that I have gone through seasons of being a people pleaser, but overall, I think I do march to the beat of my own drum most of the time, and I do what's best for me. So, yeah, I'm sure there's more, but that's all I have for the moment. Tuo Mask says, how can Saint be so cheerful and smiley-faced all the time, even when they're almost dying from frostbites and faced with demons and avalanches? She is not. She's not. She's not. She's portraying that she is, but she's not. Yeah. Mr. Ryan Winters says, oh, Jess, with your singing ability, are you going to cross-class into a bard or just use singing with the cleric magic? I anticipate that I will just be doing cleric because I think that I can work with Ron to make anything work with the cleric that I might feel that is missing that a bard might have. Kind of similar to what we did with Fahima's homebrewed powers in campaign 1. It was kind of like I kept looking at like, oh, maybe I should multi-class, but ultimately I was like, I feel like I could just work with my DM and just do the thing that I want to do without needing to, do it mechanically by the book.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of the homebrew in this instance, is that the songs don't necessarily have to be a bardic game mechanic song. Like, one of the beautiful things about the song that you did in this latest episode, which we should clip and highlight and put up just so we can use it whenever. One of the things that's beautiful about that moment is that it had an effect on the story and the moment and the NPCs that were there to witness it without it having to be a game mechanic. Because if there's one thing that I learned from the 2-shot that I ran, the Sapphire 2-shot, is everybody was devastated when you sang your beautiful song and then rolled a natural 1 on your performance check. Even though I felt like that really fit the story, and the fact that you had this warlock that was haunting you, so to speak, or messing with you. People really wanted you to succeed, not necessarily like win the talent show, but have a positive effect on what happened in the story. And so when you sang this last time, that was ruminating in the back of my head as a dungeon master. And I was thinking to myself, I don't need to have her roll, because this can just be a role-playing moment. And sometimes those moments are more effective storytelling than the dice roll that happens afterwards.
Well, it's almost like if you're going to have somebody roll a check, it should be before they do the thing, so that, like, if I rolled a natural 1 on my performance check, then I would have sung it, like, I would have whispered it to myself and closed my eyes the whole time, like, that's the order of operations, really.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you start to blur the lines of performance, so when people start to actually sing or do poetry or what have you, it doesn't necessarily match up with the game mechanics, unless the dungeon master just like gives you advantage or gives you a big bonus, and then at that point, why are you even rolling? You're just steering it, in a direction. That's an interesting quandary to discuss. I'm interested from chat. Chat, what do you think? If someone is doing a performance, whether it's singing or poetry or any kind of skill, like when I had to pick that lock, a real lock, that lock that I was trying to figure out during season 1, do you think that if somebody does something along those lines in real life, that they should automatically succeed at their check if they do a good job, if they should get a big bonus or advantage, or if they should still just have to make that roll, and if they fail miserably on that roll, then the dice decide regardless of how well the performance or skill was performed? Kitty Scritches is saying, I like the idea of rolling before the performance. That's interesting. I've never seen anybody do that before. I'd be willing to give that a shot to see if that would work in a game. It
depends too, right? Because it's like you said, there are moments when you wouldn't have somebody roll. Like that moment where she sang in this past episode, that's not really a roll for it moment, I guess. But if there was a time when I was truly trying to like persuade somebody with a song, then I would say it would make sense to role play out the role. So therefore you would have to roll it before.
Sure. Ryan Winters is saying rolling a nat 20 doesn't always mean auto success. It just means that you did the absolute best you could. It's true. Music Man 77, I think there could be a bonus to promote doing more of that. Yeah, I agree. You definitely want to encourage it. So that's a good point. Toparto says, I've always liked making the dice roll. Svenetti, it's up for interpretation by the Dragon's Master. Not the Dungeon Master, the Dragon's Master. Jim Whitted, as a DM, I often don't make my players roll charisma or performance if they really commit to the role playing without it being an acting contest. Cool. Kitty Scritches, or could radically reduce the bar. Frankly delicious. The Jello incident was hilarious. So it seems like people could go either way, whether you still roll or not. I think what I've always done is if something is truly impressive, like there was a friend of mine that once made armor out of car tire just to prove the dungeon master wrong.
In real life?
In real life.
Oh my gosh.
He took car tires, like side of the road car tires, cut them up, bolted them together, and made armor. And it was pretty flexible and pretty functional. I was really impressed. And he did it because he wanted to prove that he could do it. It wasn't just out of spite, but he also was the kind of guy that was handy and inventive and, a scrappy Jimmy rigger. And it was a post-apocalyptic game, so it made a lot more sense than a fantasy game. But I would say in those moments when people really go all out, or they sing a beautiful song that they wrote, or they, write a poem or something along those lines, I feel like the role is almost secondary. Like you only need to do it if it's a story-based significant challenge. Like if Saint was really trying to do something specific with the song, if you were trying to convince, I'm just making this up, but let's say you were trying to specifically convince Olivar to allow Copre back into the herd. Like if that was your only goal and you really wanted that to happen, which would be challenging, it would be hard, it would be very difficult to do because she's proven numerous times that she does not want to follow the way of the white poppy and peaceful living, then I would still roll. Because even if the song is really, really good, I think having that roll there and having that tension, even with a bump, like advantage or some kind of bonus to your roll, I think adds to the story.
Yeah, the roll would definitely determine the reception of the performance.
Exactly, yeah. But if you were just like, I don't know, at a tavern and you wanted to get free drinks from the bartender for everybody, like, I'm not going to make you roll for that. You know, you sang a whole song just for free drinks.
And also a point that we should bring up that kind of Jim Whitted was talking about, Jim Whitted's comment reminded me of, is that there's a difference, I think, between a home game where you're not with a group of actors, and
True.
if your player comes in and they've prepared a whole song, give them the frickin' success, because that's amazing, you know? But we're kind of in a different situation where we're in such an elevated environment and we are all performers and have performed on camera before, so we can kind of take it the next step. And we are already there and capable of perhaps role-playing out a role, instead of simply, you know, just being like, I'm so glad you showed up for this.
Yeah, 100%. Well, this has been lovely. It's been a nice little chat. Thank you so much, people in chat, for joining us. This will go up on our Patreon VOD. If you're not a Patreon member, now is the time to join, because we will be doing a giveaway this Wednesday. During the show, we will choose someone who is on our Patreon list, and you can join Patreon for as low as $5. You will be entered automatically to win the $50 gift card to Die Hard Dice and a poster that is signed by the whole cast of season 2.
Yay!
So, yeah. So join our Patreon. And anything else, Jess? Am I forgetting anything?
That's it. We're back on Wednesday for episode 5.
5.
Wow, I think we're already at 5.
Yeah.
Actually, I can't believe we're not further. I don't know. Time is a construct. Yeah, thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you so much for your support. All of the gift subs from Anonymous Gifter and from Svenetti, and the cheers from everybody in chat means a lot to us. And in addition to Patreon, interaction with the show, as we covered today, it really changes the game. So tell your friends, tell your family, and we will see you on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Bye, everybody.
Bye.